Hello, welcome to a slightly delayed Museum Moments. Today we are going to be exploring the idea of what is kosher. And you hear that word in all sorts of ways, oh, is it kosher to do something? Is that kosher? All sorts of things come up about this idea of kosher, but kosher is really about food. And it's about very specific Jewish laws for food. So I think that today I hope to clear up some of those misconceptions and that we can explore some really interesting Milwaukee Jewish history around what it means to keep kosher and who was responsible for helping keep kosher. The basics of keeping kosher are this, and these are all laws that are put forth in the Torah that are then specified in many, many different degrees and over time. And I think in our presentation with Amy Ferrante on her business, she definitely can enumerate how that impacts, the decision to serve raspberries or the decision to use Brussels sprouts and what certain hashgacha, certain hechshers are more important or more useful than others. But for now, let's just go with kind of the basics. The first is that there's a separation of meat and milk. In the Torah, it says 3 times, you don't boil a kid, a baby goat, in its mother's milk. And the rabbis interpreted that to mean that no land mammal or bird can be eaten with the dairy. So that means that your cheeseburger is a no-go. And your chicken enchilada with cheese, no-go. Land mammals in particular, they must chew their cud and have a split hoof. And it specifies that there are certain animals like a pig, which are not kosher. So bacon, cheeseburger, definite no-go in the realm of kosher. Fish must have fins and scales, so no shrimp, no shellfish. But fish, on the other hand, is not considered a meat. So you could have a tuna melt. And meat must be slaughtered according to Jewish laws. And that's where this idea of kosher really comes to fruition in America in a very different way, because having your meat slaughtered or having your food prepared in a specific way to ensure that it is ritually okay by Jewish standards, that's where you need to have some sort of body that's watching this. So this bunch of symbols are a bunch of kosher symbols from around the country. And all of these specify a certain group that has been given the authority to say, yes, we see this as kosher, and they go in and they monitor different facilities. Now, if you think about it, this is not something you would have had to do hundreds of years ago, because where did our food come from? Well, we saw the farmer, we'd buy it from a farmer, we'd see the grain, we'd get it from that granary. We knew that our baker was a kosher baker, and because these were the products that he or she used. And we had a kosher butcher, and all of this was very localized. But as food became increasingly manufactured, around the world, and products were coming in from everywhere, it meant that we really needed bodies to watch what was going in our food and to manage this. The largest of these is the OU that you see in the top left corner. That stands for the Orthodox Union. But there are local bodies as well that explore, that make sure that food is being watched. Kosher means watched, guarded, and that it is ritually clean. Awesome objects, the fact that Jay highlighted, we started what it means to keep kosher. One of my favorites was the fact that we found that there was a riot that took place in Milwaukee in 1907. And the riot happened because the kosher butchers had raised the price of meat. You can see here it says excitement reigned throughout the Jewish ghetto neighborhood of 7th and Vliet Street on account of the attempt of a dozen kosher butchers to increase the price of meat. 2 mass meetings were held by the people who refused to pay the new price. A boycott was established, would-be purchasers have been intimidated, and fights over meat occurred in the street. The angry mob picketed the market for 2 days, and several rioters were arrested. The marketmen said the increased prices are because of wholesalers did the same first. One butcher was accused of stabbing a man. I did not find any other verification of that. And a woman who secretly bought kosher meat was dragged through the street by a mob. So also did not find independent confirmation of that. I did find that 2 women were arrested because they had taken the meat out of another woman's basket and thrown it at her. So we take our meat seriously. And there's another one of these articles from the same time period that posits that people are going to become vegetarians. The one thing that I couldn't find in any of the papers was the outcome. You know, did the public just get used to paying more for meat? Or did the butchers say, okay, you win and you guys can pay less? So if anybody wants to do some digging on the outcome of this kosher meat riot, let me know. This was a letter to the Chronicle from 1949. And in the late 40s, a group of people through the Jewish Community Relations Council, or just the Community Relations Council, decided they wanted to try and organize a Avad HaKashrut to say that we know exactly who is managing all of the kashrut, that there's one body that all of the kosher butchers are kind of applying to for certification. And at this point, I think it had been a matter of trust between a number of different butchers and specific synagogues, and this was to say we want one guiding body between them all. This letter was written by Abe Chudnow, who is a prominent Milwaukeean. He actually is the name founder of the Chudnow Museum of Yesteryear. And this, to him, I think he really does speak to the power of the kosher butcher in America. He says, the butcher who dispenses kosher meats and poultry occupies a position of trust and responsibility, not only to the Jewish community as a whole, but to the ideal and goal of preserving Jewish life and conserving Jewish tradition and law. Because of his status in this capacity, he is not only morally bound, but actually a party to the traditions developed over the years. In his position as an entrusted agent for the observance of the Jewish law and tradition in certain of its phases, it is required of him to so conduct his business as to be identified in spirit and in action through himself and his associates in maintaining his business activity so as to encourage adherence to kashrut and other symbols of our religious beliefs. In this way, the kosher butcher can use his status and influence in avoiding a potential disintegration of other aspects of Judaism. In short, the kosher butcher is an active agent in the preservation and dissemination of Judaism. That gives a lot of power to the kosher butcher. It says that you are what you eat, basically. In terms of this idea, your Jewish life is dependent upon the kosher butcher being reliable. This is a picture of the kosher butcher's picnic from 1936. I am guessing they had an amazing spread of meat at this. And you can see there's a long line of men. At the very end of the line, there's a little boy, and that is actually Susie Rosengarten's father-in-law. She works for the Milwaukee Jewish Federation. She works for Partnership Together. And the thing that I'm in awe of in this picture is there are 20-some men identified as kosher butchers in Milwaukee in 1936. By the 1970s, this number is much, much smaller. And in fact, at that point, there's a big transition. The Kosher Meat Club, which was the last standing kosher butcher shop in Milwaukee, had just transitioned. Most of us have no idea where our meat is killed, where it comes from, how it gets to us. And it's all much more anonymous, but you don't have that kind of relationship. You just pick it up off the grocery store shelves. My last object is a piece that was given to us by Marla Slippo, who was a volunteer in the archives for many years. And this was a cow that her mother-in-law bought that sat in the window of her husband's, and before that, her father-in-law's meat store, meat market, which originally was at 7th and Brown, and moved and was the first kosher butcher shop on the east side. It was in operation there as M. Rodin's Inc. until the 1970s. So it's been gassed to share with you all of these aspects of kosher life in Milwaukee. And I'm excited to see if anybody turns up more on what that riot looked like. And we'll see you again at our next museum moment. They're on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays at 2 o'clock on Facebook Live, or you can catch them on YouTube after the fact. Thanks.